Okay, we'll start our webinar now. Welcome, good morning and evening, everyone from all around the world. Thank you very much for joining us in our webinar on climate change, impact of hot summer on fruit and vegetable production. I am your host, Juan Carlos Cortez. I am a global market analyst here at Tridge in the intelligence department. We have a very diverse group today in various time zones across the world. So we're very excited for everyone to join us from all the different countries. Let's start our webinar today. We have three different panelists and one presenter. So let's get started with the webinar. For the most optimal viewing experience, please click on the view options menu at the top of your Zoom meeting window. When enabled side-by-side mode to view both top of your Zoom meeting, both presentations and our speaker during the event. We have real-time translations today. So select in the show caption and then choose a language between English, Spanish, French, and German for you to get a translated version of the webinar. If you need any technical help, please use the chat feature in the WebEx tools, and a Tridge member will assist you right away if you need technical information. So please write us in the Q&A or in the direct messaging feature of WebEx. So welcome to the webinar of climate change, impact on hot summer and on fruit and vegetable products. Before we start, I want to tell you a little bit about Tridge. Tridge is a leading global sourcing and market intelligence platform. Our intelligence and data platform provides qualitative and quantitative data on food and agriculture to provide comprehensive solutions for our users. Some of the intelligence we provide includes, but is not limited to, local insights, Tridge analysis, data analysis, price data, weather data, trade data, and so on. If you would like to learn more about Tridge intelligence and solutions, please feel free to reach out to us via email. Or feel free to post questions in the chat as well. After this webinar is over, you will receive a certificate of participation for your records. We'll explain more about this at the end of the webinar, but we are handing in now webinar certificates for you to have a more proof that you assisted the webinar. And this is also attached to a survey that we are also sending, but we'll explain you this at the end of the webinar. We are also introducing a Tridge Exhibition 365, revolutioning the way of doing business in agriculture. We have created an agribusiness ecosystem in over 60 countries, meaning we can offer a powerful way to help growers and exporters meet the right buyers globally. Our data allow us to help you target specific buyers by matching purchasing requirements with your products. Tridge platform can promote your brand and products to particular importers and retailers through B2B marketing solutions. Tridge can get you discovered by verified anytime and set up one-on-one meetings to accelerate your export growth potential. Something very important and new to this Exhibition 365 future is that we are now being sponsored by Alfao. So this is our new sponsor for the Exhibition 365, the company Alfao. So thank you to everyone there to make this Exhibition 365 possible. Let's get on with the agenda for today. We will briefly go over these topics as well as have a panel discussion as we are used to. We first will review regional variations in hot summer and their impact on agriculture. We will then review global initiatives and policies addressing the climate issues. in different regions. And then we will have a panel discussion. And if there is time, we also go through some of the Q&A questions that you will leave in the chat. If we have time for that, we will address that as well, of course. So let me introduce you to your hosts, to your panelists today. As I already mentioned, I'm Juan Carlos Cortez. I'm based in Mexico City. I'm a global market analyst that covers fruit and vegetables divisions globally. And then we have our presenter today and our three panelists. Our presenter is Bojan Mijatovic, which is a global market analyst as well that covers fruit and vegetables. And then we have our three panelists. We have Elton Greeve, who has been a panelist before. He's our origination manager in South Africa. We have also Wang. I think Lee is the first time participating in a webinar. We're very happy to have her. She is a researcher in China from the Global Market Intelligence team. And we also have Rashmi Sahu, which has and also better known as Ron. For us, he has participated in webinar as well. You might remember him. He's our origination manager in India. So without further ado, just reminding you that if you have any questions that you hope to address during the webinar, please send them in the Q&A in the chat feature, and then we will try to address in the Q&A session some of these questions or complaints that you may have. So without further ado, I will pass the microphone to Bojan, who will start with its presentation. Thank you very much, Bojan.
Thank you, Juan. Hello and welcome everyone from my name. My name is Bojan Mijatovic, and I'm a Tridge marketing specialist in fruits and vegetables. For today's webinar, the topic will be climate change and impact of hot summer on fruit and vegetable productions. As Juan mentioned, I will talk about regional variations in hot summers and their impacts on agriculture, then passing on to the global initiatives and policies addressing the climate issues. And finally, after the presentations, we will move on to the panel discussions. We can now start with the first slide. Importance of weather data. We are all aware of the importance of weather data, and one of the features on our Tridge platform is the weather data key for assessing supplying market conditions of production quality and volume. What does this mean for buyers? Buyers can get a direct analysis of the weather conditions of the supplying markets. For suppliers, on the other side, they can view major producers' weather conditions from a bird's eye view, obtain province-level data for detailed assessments. Why is weather important? How can weather analytics help agribusinesses? They can find regions with normal or abnormal weather anomalies and check detailed rainfall and temperature. NDVI data and weather alerts for key provinces are all the part of the Tridge platform key feature of the weather data. Now we move on to the negative impacts of adverse weather. Climate change is a pressing global issue that possesses significant challenges to various sectors, including agriculture. The interplay between climate change and agricultural commodities is critical to understand, as it offers and affects food security, prices, and global trade. It's a key fact that climate change is caused by a building of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide, in the Earth's atmosphere. This buildup results in more heat from the sun, resulting in higher temperatures and altered weather patterns. This then causes the weather patterns to change, resulting in more frequent droughts, floods, and hurricanes, all of which have a direct impact on agriculture. Some of the solutions to try is to address climate change. We need to reduce our carbon footprint and invest in sustainable agriculture. Hotter summers can negatively impact agricultural productivity by increasing evaporation. Juan, please go back to the previous slide. Sorry. Yes. What are the negative impacts of hotter summers? Evaporation and drought conditions, water scarcity, impacting agricultural households and ecosystems, and also affecting biodiversity, affecting plant and animal populations. This can also lead to increased energy demand and infrastructure damage, potentially resulting in power outages. Solution is to reduce our carbon footprint and invest in sustainable agriculture. On the right, you can see effects of climate events in Morocco and water scarcity, a significant challenge in Morocco with horticultural disruptions affecting various crops, grains and beets majorly, but also for export crops like citrus fruits and early vegetables, export commodities important to Morocco. So on the left side of the picture is just 1 year ago, all is green, but then on the right, you can see the impacts of high temperatures and lack of water, almost without the greens. So on the next slide, we will tackle on Europe fruits and vegetable impacts. Of course, climate change has caused decreased crop yields and field losses, leading to reduced raw materials deliveries needed for fruits and vegetable processing sector in Europe. According to a recent assessment published by the European Environmental Agency, climate change could reduce the value of a European agriculture by 16% by 2050 due to more droughts and heavier rains. Climate change could have a more impact on EU agribusinesses, with crop productivity dropping, especially in the Mediterranean countries, with drought frequency increasing and land value rising. One example is Spain. Spain is a major fruits and vegetable supplier, was hit hard in 2022 and continues to be affected in 2023. For the second year in a row, Spain faced a severe heat wave and drought towards the end of April and continued in May. This resulted in the rise of wholesale prices, for example, for common potato. In Spain, in May, the price was 0.79 US dollars per kilogram, almost 40% year-on-year increase. Reduced production and stable demand for quality potatoes are projected to cause additional price hikes, while bad weather conditions will continue to erode potato growers' profit margins in Spain. Some other products that are being influenced are lettuce, soft fruit, peppers, and tomatoes. Climate change is here to stay and will be a major factor in the production of crops going forward. Now we are switching on to the MENA region and its fruits and weather impacts. An unexpected heat wave in Egypt caused a significant difference in daily temperatures range, affected fresh and root vegetables all over. One example are the Egyptian onion production, where price skyrocketed 73% month on month. Egypt onions production is expected to decrease in 2023 as farmers suffered losses last season due to floods and reduced planted hectares. Egypt, on the other side, potato production suffered losses, but as mentioned in the Tridge analysis from my colleague Juan, although extreme weather has impacted Egyptian production in some regions, the overall country production has not been affected, strengthening its position as a leading European supplier. This opened new opportunities for Egyptian traders in 2003 due to potato shortages in Europe. On the other side, in United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and this region, they have feel the effects of lower mango volumes from India and Pakistan, which we will mention later. During 2022 to 2023, Iran produced 4 million tons of apples, a 7% decrease year on year due to adverse weather changes. Switching on to Asia weather impacts, sorry. Asia's governments are scrambling to mitigate the impact of meteorological phenomena that has previously drove food prices to heights that have triggered even civil upheaval. They want to lessen the impact of El Nino, a meteorological trend that can cause drought in Australia, Southeast Asia, and India. Meteorological forecast is below normal rain in Asia. What does this mean? For India and Indonesia, a stronger influence of ENSO cycle. India faces these challenges in mango production due to adverse weather, affecting regions with 30% to 8% depending on the region in India. Monsoon activity, excessive rains, and then heat waves. This all affected the mango production in India, and the overall estimation is 20% year-on-year drop in volume. On the other side, in Thailand, we have seen no reported shortages of fresh food products or significant increases in vegetable prices. For other parts of Asia, especially for the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam, pineapple production faces significant threats from natural environments and disease outbreaks, influenced by droughts, elevated temperatures, soil waterlogging, and rainfall fluctuations. These factors impact growth phases, production costs, and pineapple quality at the end, affecting negatively on yields and production. This similar story is for durian, jackfruit, and bananas. The heat wave in Asia is impacting these kind of commodities. Although tropical fruits are resilient to higher temperatures, they cannot withstand extreme temperatures and volume suffers. In Central Asia, onions are most affected, especially in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. Even earlier this year, there were some export bans due to shortages of onions. We are moving now on to the Asia weather forecast. As mentioned before, meteorologists forecast below normal rains in Asia. In India, in the recent events, there was some certain cyclone influences for incoherent monsoon happenings. How will this also affect change in East Asia? Significant increase of extreme high temperatures, including Eastern China, the Korean Peninsula, and Japan. What does this mean? More intense, more frequent, and longer lasting extreme high temperature events. Asia is still in the grip of a scorching heat wave, and this will continue during the summer. Climate expert projections for 2023 means that this will be the warmest year ever. We are now switching to Americas region and America's fruits and vegetable weather impacts. California, a center known as America's salad bowl, has been severely impacted by floods earlier this year, causing saturated soil and limiting strawberry, tomato, and lettuce planting. This could impact global supply, as the US is a major supplier of these commodities. The floods may lead to increased food prices, as fresh-headed broccoli prices in Los Angeles increased 110% year over year. In general, overall, for North, Central, and South America, mangoes, pineapples, and avocados, according for the fruits and vegetables department, are among the most affected. Prices are showing a general upward trend, and the profit margin is threatened for suppliers. For example, the volume of the US fresh, dried, and processed fruit exports between 2012 and 2022 dropped almost 30% to 2.9 million metric tons. One of the main reasons for the US exports drop is adverse weather. Cherry production is expected to fall 347,000 metric tons due to adverse weather conditions in Washington, Oregon, and California, its lowest level since 2008. And now we are moving on to the America's weather forecast. Summer in 2023 is shaping to be warm, and one recording according to outlooks from US Climate Prediction Center. Across the Eastern Carolinas, there has been a 50 to 60% chance for temperatures to run above normal this summer. There is not as much certainty regarding the precipitation, but forecasters believe much of the eastern US will see a slightly elevated potential for above normal rainfall this summer. In general, a mostly warm anomalies over much of the central and northern United States and Canada are expected. After almost 3 years of persistent La Nina conditions, ocean water temperatures across the tropical East Pacific Ocean are warming above normal and will likely caused El Nino to develop for the first time since 2019. El Nino is the warm phase of the ENSO cycles, the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon. ENSO brings various weather and climate impacts around the world, varying by location and by season. Now we are going back to Europe and to specific case studies regarding the climate impacts. So, as we examine the situation in Europe, observed trends in the occurrence of extreme climate events and impacts to the EU agricultural sector is increasing. For Spain and Italy, in particular, number of heat wave days have tripled. Some fruits like peaches, nectarines, and cherries, as well as grapes and leafy vegetables, are the most affected by the heat waves. In the graph below on the right, you can see influence of extreme climate events affecting economy of EU agribusinesses. Mostly these were droughts, but some were from floodings. But it must be said that losses specific to the agricultural sector count for more than 60% of drought-linked losses of around 5 billion euros annually. Extreme temperature and heat indices will occur every 1.8 years, which previously used to be on 5 years, 3 years. Now the droughts and extreme temperatures are increasing in continuity. And moving on for the final slide of this part of the presentation. What does this mean for Europe? Impacts on food security, increased food prices, often lead to lower dietary diversity as well as lower consumption levels. The EU is not specifically exposed to risk of food insecurity, being one of the top producers and traders of agri-food products worldwide. But we must also take in charge for the environmental consequences in the long term. Extreme events will affect fruits and vegetable production, especially like we said in the Mediterranean region. Which products I will specify: potato and onions. Potato and onions are sensitive during the harvesting period. On the other side, fruit orchards, fruit trees, they are vulnerable in the late spring frost. During the flowering. A late spring frost can damage the fruits substantially during the flowering, while on the other side, extreme heat and droughts can limit the yields and affect the quality of the fruits during the summer. This concludes the first part of the presentation. If you have any questions regarding the presentation, please feel free to write it on the chat, and we will try to answer it in the panel discussion part. So moving on to the global initiatives and policies addressing the climate issues. We are all aware the temperature is rising. According to some expectation, global warming already exceeds 1.5 degrees Celsius. On the right, you can see an interesting thermometer. It's called the CAT thermometer, Climate Action Tracker. It shows median warning estimates in 2100 years, so at the end of this century. It shows a 50% chance of exceeding the calculated temperature if the emission pathway is followed at this rate. So what we are doing now is not enough. This is based on the probability distribution generated by the climate model. Some of the questions during our registration was, how is Internet of Things and AI affecting the weather forecast? AI is pushing the boundaries everywhere, so it's also meant for the weather to forecast, but is showing how the temperature will rise by the end of this century. According to that, by the end of the century, it is estimated to be 2.5 Celsius degree higher, with 95% probability of exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius. Some of the protocols, and the most important one is the Paris Agreement Protocol, which is addressing these issues. And in December previously, it was on a Cancun climate change conference, the Clean Climate Fund was established. Later, after the Paris Agreement, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, 3 reports were confirmed in global fight against climate changes. And most recently, in December 2019, European Green Deal, which we also covered on our platform in Tridge, is going to have a significant effect for suppliers in Europe. Moving on to the next slide. While Earth climate has changed throughout the history, the current warming is happening at a rate not seen in the past 10,000 years. Since systematic scientific assessment began in the 1970s, the influence of human activity on the warming of the climate system has evolved from theory to established fact. Scientific information taken from natural sources, such as ice cores, rocks, and tree rings, and from modern equipment like satellites and instruments, are all showing a sign of a significant climate change. From global temperature rise to melting ice sheets, the evidence of warming planet is clear. Despite the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement, climate warming continues. We have set the targets, but no enforcement mechanisms to meet them. There's every 5 years reevaluation, but still small steps are made to fight the climate change. In EU, Common Agricultural Policy, Farm to Fork, Green Deal, all address the climate crisis. The Earth's average temperature is rising, and continued warming is expected to have harmful effects worldwide. Moving on to the next slide and final slide. One of the important institutions that is handling climate is the United Nations Environmental Programme. It's a leading global authority on the environment, have been working for over 50 years addressing pressing environmental challenges. Its mission is to inspire, inform, and enable nations to improve their quality of life without compromising future generations. Will this be enough? Only time will tell. In the meantime, a lot of climate-facing institutions have been made, like a Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, which we also covered in the previous webinars on the weather impacts. Green Climate Fund, IPCC, like I mentioned above, and UNESCO's action on climate change, and also the Sustainable Development Goals. Global policies are important to show us in which direction are we going, and of course, to help the farmers invest in changing the way how they produce fruits and vegetables. With this, I conclude today's presentation. Thank you all for joining in and listening. Moving on to Juan and opening a panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Bojan. Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. I can see someone there asking about the regions that we're covering in the presentation. So the region that Bojan focused on the presentation was the Northern Hemisphere. We will cover some of the other regions in our panel discussions. For the one that was asking there. So we will start with our panel. Again, if you have some other questions, we are running very good on time. So if you have some questions that you would like to be addressed by the panelists or by us, please send it in the Q&A or in the chat feature of the WebEx toolbar. So we will start with the panel discussions right away. First, I would like for the panelists to briefly introduce themselves before I start with the questions. So please, Elton, if you want to start.
Good day, and good day to the participants and the panelists. Thanks, Bojan, for the presentation. I'm Elton Greeve. I'm based in South Africa. I'm part of the Tridge team responsible for trade and fulfillment solutions in South Africa, basically focusing on sourcing and exporting fruit from South Africa to various worldwide markets. Thanks, Juan.
Okay. Leah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see all of you through Tridge webinar. And my name is Wang from Shanghai, China. I'm now working in Tridge as a GMI researcher. I have over 8 years working experience on agricultural goods trading. and my background is seed and nuts. I'm happy to have this opportunity to share my opinions on climate change and also share some latest news in my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lei. And Ron?
Hi everyone, this is Ron from India. I have been working with Tridge from last 2.5 years, and I was initially taking care of fruit and vegetables. Right now, we have recently launched Exhibition 365 and Market Intelligence. So I also take care of this platform sales as well. So that is all from my side. I'll happy to answer your questions on the panel.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for our three panelists. So we will start with the first question. The first question would be, what are the impacts of climate change on fruit and vegetable trade in your specific region, the one you represent? So I don't know, Ron, do you want to start with that first question?
Sure, thank you, Juan. Uh, as like all of the presentation entirely, we saw like what are the changes basically happening, but I want to focus more into India. So I can see three key points that is happening in India right now. So increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, and such as like droughts, we have floods, heat waves that all are very much difficult for the farmers to grow crops over here. So this is leading to lower yields and higher of the prices of fruits and vegetables, and it is difficult for the people to afford the cost of fruits and vegetables. The second key point, what I can see is the change in temperature and the rainfall patterns that is affecting fruit and vegetables, and it is growing in different parts of India. So that's leading to composition of fruit and vegetable exports as well. So we can see a decline in a lot, as in the presentation shown, mango is affected a lot in this particular season. So the third point what I have is like rising cost of transportation that is making more expensive to transport fruit and vegetables for long distances. So this is making more difficult for the farmers to sell this produce in the nearby market of the produce local areas. And also if you go for the import of from other countries, that is too very much expensive for the consumers to consume. So I think like these 3 points are the major impact in our region right now in India. Thank you, Joanne. You're on mute, Joanne.
Sorry for that. Sorry for that. Lee, do you want to take on the first question?
Sure. First, thank you to bring the question here. As we know that China is a big vegetable and fruit producer in the world, and also I think is biggest I think the consumer as well. And the climate change definitely has great impacts on both supply side and the consumer side. And the first impact I would like to mention is the market price fluctuation that in the recent years, we can notice that increasing numbers of extreme weather happening in China, such as heavy rain, high temperature, and sandstorm. This climate change caused both short and oversupply of the fresh goods, which brought unexpected price change to the market. It hurts both farmers and buyers' benefits. And beside the price, the yield and the quality are also big concerns. Last year, we see that many places in China have experienced record-breaking temperatures, and the heat quickened the ripening process of fruits, which brought great challenges to transport and storage, especially for fruits with high sugar content. Second, dry and hot weather also damage the fruits and vegetables in the field. It not only causes money loss to the farmers, but also have an indirect impact on the production volume for the next season. For example, in Shanxi province, it's the largest production area of domestic kiwi fruits. The temperatures in last year reached almost 50 degrees Celsius and can last it for several hours a day. It caused the fruit ripened 1 or 2 weeks earlier than usual, and the heat also affected the production volume for the next season. And the last one is the rising cost of agricultural production. The farmers here in China has to spend more energy and more money to prevent and reduce the damage caused by the extreme weather. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Elton?
Thanks, Juan. From South African perspective, we've experienced quite a bit of the effects of climate change. We've just recently come out of a prolonged drought where we saw excessively high temperature fluctuations, very little rainfall, which really affected a lot of the production regions in terms of effective production and water usage. Recently, the last 2 seasons, we've seen a lot of flooding happening, mostly in the western and northern regions, where producers, especially in the citrus and apple and pear industry, have been very hard hit by excessive flooding, which has flooded orchards. But not only that, it has also resulted in damage to infrastructure. The port was closed, Port of Durban was closed for close to 3 weeks as flooding damaged the port. As recently as last week, we saw heavy rainfall and excessive flooding in the citrus growing region in the Western Cape, with packing in some regions having been stalled for 3 weeks. We can definitely see an effect in the climate change. We're having much hotter winters and, hotter summers and warmer winters. And a lot of the pome fruit industry farmers are battling in terms of not insufficient cold units for effective apple production. And as these trends occur, it not only affects production, but it affects the volumes that are exported to other countries. We've seen with the recent rain and hail damage to large-scale apple crops in South Africa. The Royal Gala exports was affected with minimum volumes going through high demand. The climate change has definitely had an impact in South Africa, and the key focus in South Africa is how do producers adapt to this, not only from a production perspective, but the entire export value chain. Damage to infrastructure, how do they mitigate that risk? Port congestion and delays in ports due to excessive weather conditions, high winds, flooding, etc. So there's a lot of adaptation that has to be done in order to counter the effects of climate change. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Elton. So it's very interesting hearing these questions. Every region has had her different issues of climate change, whether it's floods, whether it's droughts, whether it's frosts. All of the regions have had different issues, but however, they all ended up having the same problems at the end, which is, of course, less production volume, issues at the logistics ports, which has caused in all of the regions, has caused rising input cost to move the product. And also less exported volume as well, and in some cases prices going up for customers as well. So it's very interesting to see the common ground that all of these regions have. Let's move on to the second question. How can buyers or suppliers mitigate climate change risk in the fruit and vegetable sector? Elton, do you want to start with this question?
For buyers and suppliers, the main element obviously is to assess the country they're sourcing from and the effects that climate change has had there. If I take the South African example, buyers and suppliers have been sourcing fruit from South Africa, and quite often there are disruptions due to one or other weather consequences. And one of the risks that one can implement is to assess the region which the fruit is being sourced from, where do suppliers get their fruit from, which ports will be used, and whether there are any challenges in this regard. For example, if we are sourcing citrus out of the Western Cape, has the area been affected by excessive weather, flooding, frost, etc.? So for a buyer, and both buyers and suppliers, the key element is to do research in terms of what is the climate change effect, what are the abnormal weather conditions in that region, how has it affected the fruit, how is the logistical chain affected by this. If we look at Cape Town Harbour with the high winds and the rain recently, with delays in portage there. So a lot of research goes into that, but not only that, it's also how do you mitigate the risk of fruit quality being affected by either very hot weather conditions or excessive rains or hail damage. So the quality control aspect within the fruit value chain is key, following on a abnormal weather pattern or any kind of disruption to the production and logistics chain in that sector. So buyers and both suppliers, when they do engage each other, need to mitigate these risks by analyzing these effects and how possibly this could affect any kind of transaction or trade between the supplier and the buyer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Elton. Ron, would you care to answer the second question?
Sure. What I can see over here to mitigate this climate change, what is we are facing in fruit and vegetable sector. So what can be done is we can improve agriculture practices that is done in India right now. We have a very good soil here in India, but there is a problem of drought. So some of like climate resilient varieties of crops can improve the irrigation system. I can give you some of the examples, like we have broccoli. So broccoli is a member of cabbage family, just for the information, and it is good in vitamin C and K as well as in fiber. So this can be grown basically by the farmers. Then we have like cauliflower, cucumber, okra, eggplant, peas, spinach, sweet potatoes. So these are some of the uh, fruits and vegetables which can be grown to mitigate this particular climate risk what we are having right now, so that the change shift can be done with the farmers. Secondly is like working with the farmers to develop climate resilient production plans. We can help out the farmers working with the buyers and suppliers to develop production plans and to a tailored specific climate risk in their region that can be issued by the government, and based on that, that can be informed to the farmers. Then we can support farmers in adopting the climate friendly practices, such as like support from the market. Then we give them the credit, technical assistance, that all basically Indian government is doing right now. So this all are helpful to the farmers, and it can surely mitigate the climate change what we are facing out in fruit and vegetable sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. Lee, do you want to take on that second question? Lee, you still there?
I think she's lost connection.
Hello.
You're probably...
Hello.
Yes, there you are.
Okay. It's a good question, and I think like in China, the whole industry is working hard to mitigate the climate change risk. And the first thing I would like to talk about is to shorten the supply chain. Like the digital development in China give great opportunities to all industries, including the agriculture industry. Like for fresh goods like vegetables and fruits, besides the traditional sales channels such as supermarkets and the wholesale markets, the live stream is becoming more and more popular in China. And the new generation farmers here, they are taking advantages of this new trend. And now they can sell their products directly to the customers through the live stream. And it effectively shortens the whole supply chain and brings more margin to the producers. And the second one is the new production and genetic modified technology that in China, both government and the farmers invested heavily in biotechnology to increase the agricultural productivity and quality. The advanced farming technology and agricultural machinery effectively increase the crop quality and reduce the harvest time. It's also a very good way in China to mitigate the climate change risk. And the third point I want to mention is improve the agricultural management level. Though it's not a new topic, but I think it's very important. Like in China, we usually have a forecast for the extreme weather, and the good agriculture management level is very important for the farmers to be well prepared for the possible damage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee. So very, very interesting answers for all our three panelists. Very different ways to mitigate in each sector, of course, because it depends in the different crops and the different supply chains they participate. We will move on to our third question. There is a question in the chat that I think relates with the third question that we have prepared for you. Maybe this one is asking for some specific examples. So Sophia is asking in the chat, could you give some examples of policies that should be implemented to reverse negative trends that caused by climate change? So this is very interesting because our third question does talks about policies. So maybe just to make it a little bit more extensive, if you can provide some, if there are some examples of policies to reverse negative trends caused by climate change. The original question is, are there any government regulations or agreements addressing the impacts of climate change on agricultural trade? I think they're very related. So if you want to put also examples on policies that have been implemented in your region, Lee, do you want to start with this question, please?
Sure. As we know that China, I think, is also a very big emission country in the world. And in the recent years, I think the government has done lots of efforts to to protect the environment. I think one of the very important agreement is National Agriculture Green Development Plan. This plan is drawn issued by 6 departments from the countryside and unified resource protection, pollution control, restoration of agriculture ecology, and the development of a low-carbon agriculture industry. And as key goals to be achieved between the year of 2022 to 2025. The second, China has a very strong executive force to reduce the country's emission level, such as energy transaction from the traditional energy to a more green energy. And I think in the recent years, China made a very rapid process on the clean energy development, such as solar, wind, water, and bioenergy. And I think electric car is a very good example. I think the latest data shows that there are over 10 million electric vehicles in China, which takes almost more than 50% of the whole world's total number. And the government released many policies to promote the industry, such as the free car license and subsidies. The third one is the international cooperation for the advanced agriculture technology. Because in recent years, we can notice that Chinese funds have invested in many countries on the green energy industry. For example, in last year, we can see 12% of Chinese funds invested in Australia went to new renewable projects. And it seems that the number will increase this year. And the last point is sustainable agriculture development. For example, the community-supported agriculture, which is encouraged and promoted by the government to protect the farmers' benefits. Thank you.
Do you want to take on the third question?
Sure, Joanne. I guess Lee have covered most of the answers in that is also happening in India some part, but I'll specifically say a few of the more what India is doing right now. So one of that is National Adaptation Plan for Agriculture. It called as NAPA, NAPA. So NAPA basically identifies the number of climate change risk of Indian agriculture. It includes changes in temperature, precipitation patterns, depend on the states we have, increased frequency of extreme weathers based on the region where the rising sea levels are there. So based on that, government basically actually help them out that this particular crop you need to grow if basically these regulations are there. Then one more regulation we have over here is National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, as Lee also mentioned that. So here we promote sustainable agriculture practices to help to mitigate this climate change and adapt its impacts. In spite of that, we have more of non-government organizations, NGOs we call it, and the private sector's company are also working to address this impact of climate change in agriculture trade in India. One more company is there known as Cargill, if you know about, it's a global food company to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and improve sustainability of the agriculture operations. So these were few policies, government regulations, what is been turning up good in India, and government is working more into this, how we can reduce more gas emissions, greenhouse effects, this all. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. Elton, do you want to finish that third question?
Thanks, Juan. Yeah, from a South African perspective, we have a multifaceted approach toward climate change. We have agreements and protocols between government, private sector, the academia, which all converges on developing a uniform strategy for South Africa, looking at climate change mitigation by 2030, 2050, setting specific targets which are aligned to the Paris Accord and various international climate change protocols and agreements. But taking it to the level of agriculture, South Africa has looked at more sustainable water usage practices, noting that water is a scarce resource, how farmers can mitigate excessive water usage, but also look at better water management procedures. We're looking at better soil management processes. As we know, as temperatures get hotter, soil loses more of its nutrients and does affect production. And then lastly, the most important is looking at better ways of mitigating carbon emissions, both in farming practices, but industrial sectors as well. Basically looking at how can farmers reduce the usage of carbon emitting products, whether it's in pesticides, machinery, etc., and how better to adapt those in terms of new technological advances that are available. South Africa is definitely one of those countries that is being affected by climate change, the agricultural sector being one of those that is being affected. And these adaptive policies and regulations that are both being developed and some that are in practice are assisting, but I think more needs to be done in this perspective. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you very much, Elton. I guess we have time to address one of the Q&A questions that has been made. I think there's two questions that I will try to blend together because they're very similar, and we can probably answer it in one question, whoever in the panelists. But I think it's more intended for China to Lee. So Avera Gulum is asking about the three polluting countries, USA, China, and food loss and waste. He mentioned is considered the top three polluting issues. And he's asking how do really this issue looks like, since we do have experts from China. And then Ararsa is also asking, developing countries' contribution for global warming was eminent, but USA, China, and Europe contribute much. The global warming was striking all nations equally. What was your comment on this unfair contribution equally impacted? So I guess we can generalize a bit the question in terms of and ask our Chinese expert Lee. Lee, is this how of this topic a priority for the Chinese government right now? Is China aware of the large contribution of GH emissions? And is it a priority for the current administration? How does it look the problem right now for the Chinese government?
I think it's a really good question. As we know that China is the top polluting countries in the world right now, compared with US and maybe Europe in some countries. And in the recent years, the government did a lot of efforts to reduce the pollution and the carbon emission levels. For example, like I just mentioned, that we are transfer from the traditional energy to a more clean energy, and we are using lots of green vehicles on the road. And also the government have released many policies on the agriculture side. to reduce the pollution, like the water pollution and the gas pollution, that we have a lot of regulations on the animal rights side. And they have also provide some subsidies to the farmers. Like they encourage the farmers to buy more good machinery and to feed a low protein diet to reduce the pollution, and also to develop the green agriculture. So I think the condition right now is much better than maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But I think there's still a long way here to go. But I can definitely tell our audience that we are doing much better than previous years. Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lee. Well, I think that we are coming to the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for our.
Sorry, Juan. Can I just
Yes.
leave a final note? It's not
Sure.
answering to question, but just a remark on increased temperatures and decreased temperatures of minus 2.5 degrees. So I have forgot to mention, yes, the temperature is rising and extreme events are rising, but also systems tries to level out. If we have extreme high temperatures and increasing 1.5, like the Aziz mentioned, also we have lower temperatures appearing much lower, minus 2.5 degrees. System tries to level out. If we have extreme events like heat events, droughts, then we also have a follow-up flooding and excessive rains. So this is one connection to the presentation. Also, the other part regarding the CO2 levels. Yes, CO2 levels are higher from the oceans and the nature than from the human factor, but we must also take in account the human factor and the humanity affecting the global warming and the global pollution. It's not just, you know, one element contributing to higher temperatures or increased temperatures. You know, there are a lot of factors combining, but we cannot leave out the human factor. You know, that's just what I wanted to add.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Bojan. I agree. I think that's the perfect final note for our webinar. There is a lot of what we can do besides of what it's not in our in our hands, in our control. Okay, so thank you very much. I would like first to thank our three panelists. Thank you very much, Ron, Elton, and Lei. Thank you very much for your time and your insightful answers of all of these questions. Thank you very much for Bojan as well to take the time to prepare that first presentation that we saw. We will let's move on to just to let you know about well, there's gonna be the presentation. This presentation that you just saw, it will be sent within the 24 to 48 hours to your email in which you registered for the webinar. So you will have the presentation available for you. We will also address some of the questions sent that we didn't have time to address today. We will also try to send them your way as well. If there is something pending or something important to mention, we will try to address that as well. And on a final note, we would like to announce one of our services here today at Tridge. We recently opened, as you know, our platform and newsletter to advertising. So it's a really great way and great opportunity to get your message across to over more than 500 monthly Tridge subscribers across newsletters and our subscriber base. We have many suppliers, importers, producers, wholesalers, retailers, and other great organizations in the food business actively using Tridge. So if you want to get your message across, this is a great opportunity for you as well. There's also a survey available, as I mentioned to you at the beginning. The link for the survey has been provided there in the chat. but we can also send it to you your way in the email of the webinar. So please help us to get better and to answer the survey. This will help you. This will help us a lot to know what are we doing good and what can we improve for this webinar. And also, if you have any other information on other specific question or information that you want to get us across, that's our contacts of the Tridge Intelligence team. Please let us know what you think. And well, I think that it's it for today. Thank you very much for joining us today, to all the people around the world. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in our next webinar within around a month. So we'll let you know about our new subject for the new webinar. Thank you very much to all. Have a good night, evening, or day, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.